Welcome to the enLIGHTenUP podcast. I am your host, Nicole Frolick, and I invite you to cozy up with me each week as I explore all aspects of the spiritual journey, spiritual biohacking, and expanding the mind beyond this reality. Remember that the collective awakening can start by planting one seed, so thanks for being such an amazing audience and sharing these shows with your family and friends. So without further ado, let's jump right into the episode and find out what we're discovering today. Hey everyone, welcome back to the enLIGHTenUP channel. I'm really glad to have you back here this week. I have a new guest coming on the show. Her name is Patricia of the Keystone Channel on YouTube, and she has had a very long road of healing behind her. And at 50 years old, she has spent the last 25 years utilizing an alternative health path when she discovered that the medical field really wasn't working for her. In fact, it was making everything worse. Her journey helped her learn so much about herself. However, when her path became more spiritual in nature, that is when the real healing really opened up for her, helping her to heal deeper issues of trauma, PTSD, addictions, and overall feelings lost as a child, which I can totally relate to. She now uses her YouTube platform to help educate others on the power of healing and discovering truth for personal sovereignty. Patricia, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm actually very excited to be here, and I love your channel because you have the greatest topics, and yeah, obviously I am a bit in a similar corner with topics like that as well, but more really related to healing. But I'm very grateful because it starts to take off now.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you start your YouTube channel?
The 1st of January.
This
And
year?
yes, and
Oh,
it came, well, I felt already something coming, but I didn't know what, because I was isolated for so long, no contact with people. And I remember it was New Year's Eve, and somewhere around, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the evening, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to I'm just going to set up a channel, and I'll see, what I'm going to do with it, just to see. And then it was still 2019 in America. I called in at Red Pill 78, and right there, like on the spot on the phone, I said, I'm going to start a channel. And I already had a name though, because I was already brainstorming about that with other people. But now it just came out like it was not even me. And the next day I thought, well, I jumped in, now I've got to swim. So that's how it started.
oh, I love that. That's so awesome. I find that when we act upon those instantaneous intuitive hits, there's a lot of momentum that comes from that I feel like spirit kind of puts a little wind in our sails to help us forward.
So true. It's almost like it was subconsciously action, the moment I was so nervous, because I was in 2020 already. America was in 2019. And I forgot to say, because you know how they always say, how are you? And you were like, I didn't even say like, oh, I'm okay, whatever. No, I just went with my train of, I'm going to start a channel and this and that. And so, yeah, next day I started, and yeah, that was the best decision ever, because I really started it as a personal challenge to, get out in the world again and to be in touch with people, because I've been suffering agoraphobia for 25 years. And therefore I had no contact with people at all.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, this is amazing that you're
I
able to kind of use this as a way to integrate back in.
I know it was. Uh, I mean, really, if people would find me outside, it would be like finding Bigfoot, because, yeah, I never, only buy groceries and that's it. And so I do have friends, many expats actually, and they come then sometimes from London, Barcelona, wherever, and then they are like, oh, come with us for a drink and this and that. And I always say no. This time it was closer. I told them, this is unique. Just make a picture, because and so now with this channel, I was incredibly nervous. And the next day I got all this feedback, and that blew me away, but that gave me even more courage to go on. And because I was literally also afraid of people, that was kind of the last step that I also had to take, this plunge into integrating with society again. And so it's not like I'm antisocial, because after 25 years of agoraphobia, your world just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and at a certain point you're used to it, and that's your comfort zone. And so by doing that, I went out of this comfort zone, and I was already in the Q movement, where obviously you talk online with people, but they don't see you, they don't really know you, whatever. But so, and you can see it in my first video, I was all over the place. But I like it to keep it there, because it's for me, it's a record as to my progress. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and the progress is mind-blowing. In 7 months my life has changed in a way that that uh, I think, like, why didn't I do this earlier? But then again, you know how that goes. You're ready when you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, I'm so impressed. And, there are a lot of people who want to start using their voice more and interact more with the
Yes.
world using something like a YouTube channel,
Yeah.
because it's interesting. I actually found it was difficult for me, like you. My first video, I leave up there too, and it's from I think it's from 2000 and I want to say 11 or 12, I don't know.
Wow, that
And I'm like 15 pounds heavier. I've got black hair and I'm under a palm tree.
really.
Yeah, talking about manifestation. And it, my boyfriend at the time was filming it for me. He was holding the camera because all I had was one of those, what are they called? Not oh, like they don't even exist anymore, but it's almost looks like a phone, and it's just a camera and it's got a red dot on it.
Yes, yes, yes.
I can't remember what those called. Anyway,
Yeah,
and he, bless his heart, I was so nervous to talk in front of him, in front of a camera, of just looking like an idiot. And so, of course, I sounded like an idiot and nothing was coming out the way I wanted to. And finally, I got into a rhythm and he filmed it for me. And I keep it up there too, even though my idea of manifestation has completely evolved from where that was.
yeah.
It I like to see where I've come from.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
kind of like when you go into business, the whole purpose of a business plan is so that you know where you started and you know where you're going. And when you get there, you can look back and see all of the progress.
Yeah.
And I think we shouldn't be scared of that older version of ourselves. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's a really heartwarming reminder of
Absolutely.
where we're going.
Actually, I think for me, it's not even a business. It's and it never started that way. It was nothing else but a challenge, personal
Yeah.
challenge, only to then very, very quickly turn out me helping people, having my DMs flooded with people asking questions and wanting help. I behind the scenes, I help a lot of people remotely, counseling, doing that, because obviously being in that Q movement, you discover that you're not the only one. And so I encounter many people that have similar stories to me, or the isolation, the typical things, and so then they start asking me questions, and now I just give them therapy session kind of ways to start building up to where we want to have them be for themselves. And I see huge differences, and it's so rewarding. And now with my channel, I also encourage people to start their own YouTube, or at least participate for yourself, because that's where it starts. And now I'm here having this idea to start a website and to give people healings for not this overpriced prices, because you were talking about it last week with Kaylin, and
Kaylin,
that
yeah.
yeah, and it was about the whole money issue within, the alternative healing, um, you know, uh, thing. And so, and I know all too well how that is, because if you are not well, how can you expect, how can people expect that you have the money to even pay for like these overpriced things? And people don't have to do it for free, because you mentioned, and that was actually something that helped me also balance out my thoughts regarding money and helping people, because to me that's such a conflict. And so you said something about if you do it for free, people tend to not put the effort in. And that's true, because I remember having that experience myself. And
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I had to scrape some money together to actually have a session of whatever I did, that's when I did my best. And and so that's yeah, I'm so glad I watched that show, because that's a thing that I definitely struggle with. How can you help people, and at the same time, you cannot do everything for free. I'm like in Europe, and I help people in America. I'm constantly living in American time zone.
Yeah.
So you know
Yeah, that's yeah, you were saying that, and I can see how that would get like for your time clock on your body can be a bit exhausting. So what were I'm curious, through your own spiritual journey and healing, what was one of the more difficult aspects of your healing journey that also tied into the evolution of your spiritual journey? Because I feel for me, the two kind of really go hand in hand. And there's a huge teaching available to us to not only just discover ourselves, but also discover our own power and abilities to shift our life, to shift our body, to shift our health. What was it for you that really stands out on your healing journey that helped you in that way?
Well, and this may come as a surprise for many, but or at least for those that are still in that process, it's only on hindsight when you can, um, you know, make the assessment of what happened and how. So for me, it was hitting rock bottom. Hitting rock bottom is the best that can happen to you, and it's true, because um, I've seen it also with my brother. To be honest, he was a heavy crack addict. I was the last one to let him go. Was very difficult, but the moment I let him go, he didn't have anything anymore, like literally living on the street. And that's when he actually sought help. And so those moments are significant to how you're going to proceed from there on. And then obviously from there on, it's a huge struggle to crawl out of it, but what do you have to lose? And then there's even these phases where you think, okay, now I hit rock bottom, and it turns out no, you know the bottom is even lower, and it can still go lower and lower. But eventually my spiritual development came when I gave up on the regular health system, because I didn't get any help there. And so and I tried everything, and I mean literally everything. So at that moment, you're alone, and all you can do is figure it out for yourself, which I did. And that, in a way, um, um, how shall I phrase that? In a way, it gives you a sense of surrender. And that's when you go for it. And that's when there is no other way than, your own responsibility. Um, Set aside the whole victimhood, because that's another part of that you need to discover that you're in that. And from there on, you start moving, and as soon as you start moving, you become automatically more in tune with spirituality as well. And uh, obviously I already knew I had that in me very strongly, but I didn't make use of it, because for me it felt like I cannot do that because I'm not energetically in a good place. And therefore, that can also like backlash, give you a backlash, right? And so as soon as I started to find that balance there, I started developing it gradually with my healing, my personal healing, and the whole spiritual aspect, the intuition aspect became stronger while I grew. And so, you know, it balanced itself out, and ever since it only grew from there, really.
Wow. You said something there that was really key, and I've never fully given it enough weight in my own awareness of how when we do kind of go on our own journey through our own health, there is a sense of feeling alone, but there's also a sense of regaining personal sovereignty. And
That's it.
and this idea of not being the victim to the system, and there's varying systems like layered in there. The health system is only one, but that idea of like taking your own life into your own hands and your own control,
Yeah.
as opposed to just giving everything up to an authority figure all the time. And it's not that an authority figure doesn't have its place. It's just that we've really kind of tipped the scales to giving everything up to the authority figure and not building our own authority within.
But that's also how we obviously grew up. This is our systems. This is what we know. Um, Very interesting, by the way, because this week I'm a huge, huge admirer of Peter Jordan Peterson. I always mix the two up. Anyway, he's a very intelligent man, comes from the science world, and now he finds himself the last year being completely sick because he's had this independence on biodiazepines.
Mm-hmm.
And so he searched for all these same systems that he actually worked in, that he actually studied. And then he found himself, being so desperate because nobody can help him. And so it was this week I saw the update, and it was so interesting to see that somebody coming from the science field specifically, because they can be quite hard-headed because I studied this is how it is, and it's like that then you find yourself so desperate that there is no other way than to open up to surrender. And you mentioned something else in here about the victimhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that. For me, that was when I went, at a certain point, I was pretty happy, compared to where I came from. Obviously, everything is relative. But at a certain point, I thought to myself, well, I'm quite happy. I now want to get rid of my medication, which was benzodiazepine, which I used as well so badly that I didn't even know it until I got out of it, how I was pretty much not on the planet for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah. So when they asked me, in rehab, they go like, okay, so can you tell your blackouts? And I'm like, I never had blackouts. But then I realized I had a 10-year blackout, because once I started remembering, like, okay, when was my birthday? When you start in conversations, getting memories back of whatever you did, or anecdotes of what happened, I couldn't recall them. And that's when I realized only then how addicted I was for real. And so that was weird. But at the same time, that's where one of my therapists I had there, she gave me the folder. Everything was in English. She gave me this folder, the super victim syndrome. So obviously, what do you do when you get a folder like that? You get mad as hell, and you're like defensive, and you're like, that's not me, Now I laugh about it. However, in the evening, I went to my room because I was there like for 6 months in Scotland. And so I started reading. I started to do the questionnaire that was in there. And I'm like, that moment, the epiphany came, it was like, I'm a total victim for myself in my own eyes. And so it was, that moment was the life-changing moment. At that moment, when I realized it for real, I could admit it to myself, obviously, because at the end of the day, you're there to help yourself. You know,
Yeah.
nobody's going to help you
Mm-mm.
because I already hit that part where I knew that I had to surrender. However, then you need to start learning where your mistakes are. And so once I saw that, I was so blown away by it. And like instantly, within a minute, as soon as I realized it, my whole life changed. My whole outlook on things changed. My whole way of viewing healing in itself changed. Everything changed. And that, I think we can probably say that that was the biggest turning point in everything.
That's super powerful because I've often, like, there was a moment for me, I had a similar, not to the extent that you did, but a moment where all of a sudden I realized I just had to shift my perception and my whole world changed. The way I felt about the world, the way I felt about me, everything shifted in an instant. And there really is like that instant kind of healing, or a quantum shift, as some people call it, that is available to you just through the simple act of perceiving something in a different way.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about how when you were taking that survey or that test, that booklet, and you realized, oh my God, I'm a victim. And in that moment, you like, it's just like the surrender.
Yeah.
I got a picture of the 10 of Swords tarot card, where the
Yeah.
guy's lying on his stomach and all these swords are in his back. And I saw that as your ego.
Oh, the moment she gave me that folder, my ego went out of the roof. However, and this is it, you only when you're ready for it, you will encounter it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
because everything, if I look back now on everything, every moment, every epiphany I had, because I had many of these type of situations, because you come from very deep, right? Or very far, however you want to call it. And all the same epiphanies, I now know they all had to happen in that order in order for where I am now. And for other people, that is maybe another way around, because your system and your belief system work differently. But overall, I can now, for example, look at people and I know after a while talking to them, what is their problem, etc. I know exactly at what stage they are and what the next step is, to what they are ready for to do. And that, because I analyzed my whole road to of healing myself, because I am very analytical,
Mm-hmm.
and I love to know, because it's a curious thing, to be honest, and so once I started seeing all these moments in my life back, oh, so that's why that happened at that moment, and that's why only later did I discover this and that, and so now when I help people, I uh, for some reason I can read them very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
their belief systems and all that. And so I also quickly know which is the first step to take in order to make this next step up. I
Yeah.
have this card in my toilet that says you don't need to see this the staircase, you only have to make the first step. And that's true, because you cannot know what comes ahead, which sometimes can make you impatient once you know how it works. But I also accept that when something doesn't work out, it's because probably I'm just not ready yet. Probably there's another step to take first. And now I'm so good at that. It's insane. It's insane. And for myself still daily, I
Yeah.
just train myself constantly.
That's incredible. I'm curious, and I'd love for us to kind of go into this conversation a little bit before we get into more of the intuitive aspect here. But I'm curious how you, like, having to detox that drug out of your system after having it for 10 years constantly in your system. You're 50, you look fantastic. You look absolutely great for 50. And we can get into this topic of, I feel like And I know this to be true because I've studied a lot on telomeres. I don't know if you've looked into telomeres.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely.
And I know that meditation, breath work, that all helps to lengthen your telomeres, which literally reverses the aging signs.
Yeah.
You know, let's kind of first talk about the drug detox and what you kind of had to go through and what sort of changes you noticed in your body throughout that kind of journey. And then we'll kind of get into the 5D age reversal.
Well, this is a very, very interesting thing because usually people that go into rehab and, they encounter all sorts of withdrawals and all that. For me, it was completely different than any other person. And that is because I came out of trauma, I was isolated. And the day that I decided, well, let's go in rehab because, I'm quite happy with myself. Let's just get rid of that. So I went to Scotland, which is here covered by the insurance. So, well, at the time it was. Now it's not like that anymore. However, um, uh, I had a boatload of medication to get into the airplane, obviously, because I was also agoraphobic, which was for me probably a bigger problem than the whole addiction itself, although the addiction was pretty severe. And because next to that, I also used Coke. So I had these upper and downers, because I took the Xanax to completely numb myself from that constant anxiety to then use Coke as to keep me awake, and not in an excessive way that most Coke users do. It was just like, I need to be awake as well. But so what happened is something I never expected to happen because I didn't think of it, which was coming into rehab. The moment I arrived, I will never forget, all of a sudden I was surrounded by 70 other addicts. Well, imagine that 8 months before that, the whole past 8 months before I arrived there, I didn't see a human being. So I skipped the whole thought of the social aspect, the people aspects. Now that freaked me out. That freaked me so much out that somehow I didn't even feel the whole detox, the whole withdrawal, because I was so busy with managing these surroundings of people around me. I was immediately a target as well. And so I was very much bullied at school. And there in rehab, I found myself being thrown back in the school time where all these women bullied me. I don't know why. My English, well, because most of them were Dutch and my English is quite good compared to theirs, though they accused me of being cocky and thinking that I was better than them. But I had no social skills whatsoever, and so I needed, for the past 20 years, I've been like isolated. So here I am finding myself with all these women and then also guys all attacking me and bullying me and doing all sorts of stuff, like grown up people doing all sorts of stuff because they're in their frustration of detox, and so they need something to get. And so I found myself thrown back into the school time where I was bullied. Only this time, at the school time era, I used to let them bully me. I let them beat me up. I let them call me anything they wanted. And now what happened was I went to the complete other extreme. Now I went completely aggressive. I defended myself so aggressively that they had to do an intervention between me and everybody else. I only had 3 people in there that actually were my friends and that tried to protect me from all the onslaught I got every single day. So you're there for your detox, right? But I didn't get the first 4 months, I didn't get to work on anything drugs related or addiction related. All I was doing, trying to find all these mechanisms that I was in when I was young and try to how to figure out how the hell am I going to manage this, because I had no clue. And so, yeah, I was the most hated person there. And, you know, purely because I just didn't have any social skills, and I came across probably in a way that I didn't know. I just, it was one big trauma. So I didn't notice anything of my detox itself because I was just busy fending off bullets, kind of.
Wow. That's incredible. That's, it's amazing. That just goes to speak to the power of the mind, first of all.
It's, well, wait, this in itself was a divine intervention. Somehow this had to happen.
Mm-hmm. It's almost in a way like the drugs in a way got you to the place to finally face a deeper fear within you.
Exactly. Exactly. Because, you know, you're numb like for 10 years without actually knowing it. Because remember, the first 4 months when it's benzodiazepine, it's worse than heroin, really, to detox from, they say. But I didn't notice anything about it because my mind was constantly busy. Because remember, you're off that. You have your anxiety, which increases obviously due to the fact that you don't numb yourself anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But you get attacked on a like all day long, to the point where you have group therapy sessions that they actually refuse to have me in there. You know,
Wow.
it was like being in high school, like that type of, and pure adults that would treated me like this. It was to the point that even the therapist didn't know anymore what to do. They said they have never seen anything like it. And yeah, that was beyond something they've ever seen, actually. They said as well, it was literally like people wouldn't engage with me during therapy sessions. When you help each other during group sessions, you need to give each other feedback and all that. They just refused to engage with me, all out of hate. And it was, for me, I couldn't understand it. For me,
Did you as a child feel unseen and invisible?
absolutely, yes,
So
yes.
that was being brought up to mirror to you the very deep wounds that needed to be healed so that you could spiritually see that was coming up to create. It was, you were literally creating that reality for yourself so you could be aware that it's still underlying and needs to be healed. It's almost
Yeah.
like though it came in like on steroids.
It was so, in itself it was a bit traumatic. However, because then you think, you know, you're like cured from your um, addiction when you come back. And but what happened was, you know, you had these um, like every week there is a person of the community in there, right? Because it's a huge clinic, it's a castle, it's in the middle of nowhere. And so you there are people that have behaved well and they did well and they had made progress, so they become most improved person of the week. Yeah, you had that. And obviously and people also vote for that. Now, clearly, nobody ever votes for me because, you know, it was to the point I even had therapists against me. And that had probably everything to do that I just didn't know how to deal with social, you know, ways. And I saw a lot of dishonesty in that too. And so I mean, really, I acted out like there. It was beyond normal. Plus, I was also
Wow.
on antidepressants, which was taken down as well. Now, that went way too fast, to the point that I found myself, that was 4 months later, I wanted to hang myself on a tree. And I had no control over my mind, over nothing, which I had another crisis intervention there because that's when the psychiatrist realized this is going way too fast for her. I became crazy, like literally. I wanted to get out of my skin. I just wanted to hide out of my skin. And at a certain point, I found myself in such a desperate moment, and I had nobody. And I was already used to being always alone. But in this time, although you're around so many people, I didn't know where to go. It was the skin crawling anxiety. And so that's when they had to put me back onto antidepressants.
Yeah.
Because, it was too dangerous. In the meantime, I didn't get any benzos or whatever. And so what happened then was that, slowly I came back a bit to a stabilized moment. And that's when everything turned around. That I remember, I will never forget that the last week of my stay there, I was the most improved. Actually, it was 3 weeks before I left. The whole community called me the most improved person, and I got along with everybody, and everybody got along with me. So that
Wow.
in itself was not about rehab and getting rid of drugs. It was about changing my past. And
Mm.
and so obviously, as soon as I arrived back home, the first thing I did, actually, I already did it before I left Scotland, already called my doctor to get Xanax, because I was scared out of my mind. However, obviously I didn't take that much anymore. And I knew now that also everything was different. That was also when I realized, I do want to get rid of this phobia, because I already gave up. I mean, I was 20 years into agoraphobia. So what are you going to do? At a certain point, you arrive at this point where you're like, well, I just learned to live with it. No, at that moment, I had hope again. I wanted to get out of it. I wanted to fight for it again. Obviously, I had a lot of hurdles to still overcome after that. And you know how I got off the Xanax eventually? Only 8 months later, when I had my first energy healing, and so a remote healing, no less. I cried for 3 days, and literally from that moment on, I didn't have the craving anymore. It was gone.
Wow.
I stopped point blank.
Was there anything specific within the healing that you can recall that you think was attributed to it, or?
Yes, it was there was something around me that made me feel like I was like in chains my
Mm-hmm.
whole life, like with my back against the wall. That feeling, I only then did I realize I never knew anything else until I got sort of freed out of that. That's why I cried for 3 days, because that's when I realized, oh my God, this is how people feel their whole lives. And I didn't even know there is this feeling of freedom. I could feel my surroundings. Well, I felt literally like I was in chains my whole life, like a prisoner. And so, and that was so shocking to realize that I never knew what freedom was, mentally or physically, which I cannot explain because it's an energetic feeling.
No, I think like, yeah, it makes a total sense to me. I totally get it. That, well, what we don't realize is how much our mind can put us into bondage physically as well as mentally, and how that can affect our daily lives.
Yeah.
And you just took on like a very extreme example of really what this entire world is experiencing in many ways. This kind of slavery to the matrix system that we're trying to break free of, that we're trying to expose to other people who don't even know they're a prisoner. They don't even like you. It's so interesting that you didn't even know. Like, to me, I feel that empathically. I feel when you were saying you were crying for 3 days, you're like, oh my God, people actually feel like this. Like, this is what freedom feels like. That I felt empathically. I feel all through my body right now. But it's when you take that to a level where we're looking out at the world, these people don't even realize that they're slaves. They don't even realize how imprisoned they are to a system that they think they're free in.
Well, yeah, but I think I know what you mean, because that's a complete oblivion, right? However, in my case, because I met my boyfriend at the time in rehab, but we had an instant soul connection. It was um, now on hindsight that we're not together anymore, but we were together for 6 years. Um, our relationship had a purpose, which was healing. He was much more, to the feminine. I was much more to the masculine. He was much more sensitive. He dared to show his emotions. I couldn't at all. I was just like, I need to protect myself at all costs. And so he was really good at seeing things that, I mean, most people don't see, the empathy that he has and the way to tune into people. And so that day, when I had that healing, he came here because he lived in another city. So we never lived together. And so he came in my house. We were already together, like, I think we were probably like 2 years in, or maybe 1.5 year in our relationship since the rehab. And so he comes in, I open the door and he goes, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "You see me." And immediately I knew what he meant, because I would look, but I never saw. I was always, there was this glaze. And he said, and so I kissed him, like when he comes in, I kissed him. And he goes like, "Holy crap," he goes like, you actually felt that, you actually were present. And when he said that, I started crying. That's when the 3-day crying started happening, because that's when I realized that I was not conscious of me. I was not conscious of anything. I was a zombie. And I was that my whole life, because I always felt like I didn't belong, and there was no safety either. And I didn't want to accept that I was born at all. I have said this multiple times over my life. And I just didn't know how to find my way in that. And so when he said to me, "You are here," instantly I knew what he meant, because for the first time I noticed that I was present. I was a being. I was me. I was here. I saw with my eyes instead of looking, or, I could see instead of, always thinking in ahead or in the past, but never in the now. That moment was so, that there was another one of those huge epiphanies. I had many of these.
I think like it's very interesting because I'm kind of, I mean, it's interesting because we know a lot of this information that I'm going to like talk about, but sometimes we don't realize the severity of the impact that it has on us. So you telling your story is really it's driving home the, the impact, the severity of the impact of what social distancing does to us as a human race. Just what it does to our own ability to stay present, to feel, to be conscious in this reality. Yeah. Like
Yes.
your story is like an extreme example, but it's perfect because it really highlights where it can go.
Well, and that's what I realize now, because now I look back and everybody's like, "Oh my God, you helped me so well." And it just comes natural, but probably it is because it was so extreme. And probably it is because I also am very analytical, and I can look back, and I do it regularly, like looking back, like what happened, and it's like, that's mind blowing, Plus, I came indeed out of an extreme situation that nobody actually experiences in the way that I do, because I literally was a hermit.
It's interesting because when we talk about this idea of like who we can help, everyone has a life path, and you have a life path to learn these lessons to eventually become a teacher in some capacity. We're all students and teachers, and I say this all the time. But what a lot of us don't understand is that we're like, well, who am I going to help? And I'm like, you're going to help whoever is the older version of yourself. Who is the older version of yourself? And there's a lot of people out there who going through very similar experiences. We all like are learning very similar lessons, maybe in a little bit of different context or, all of that, but it's all the same stuff. And I love how your story is so helpful at this time, considering what we're all going through and what we call like maybe the deep state is trying to impose upon us about like this social distancing and the ridiculousness of it, and how social distancing, from what I understand, isn't even a scientific like term study. It came from a kid who's did a science project fair and never like backed it up with anything, and they just took that term and now we're using it. It's not scientific, it's not proven.
Here's another interesting thing, because everybody's going hysterical with the social distancing, yeah, and being at home because we couldn't. You could only go out or whatever. And I thought, here's another divine intervention, because for me nothing changed, because I
Yeah.
still have agoraphobia. So for me, the world is not different. Actually, I went out during those times because for me it was
As
like,
people.
oh, it's like everybody stayed home, so I can now finally go out, kind of feeling. But then I figured, so many people now see what my life is, but they couldn't understand how I was still happy, because for me nothing changed. And so in that sense, right? And so uh, the thing is, what the beauty about what happened here is the whole, Kung Flu, is that people got to sit with themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that was actually a good thing, because, again, divine intervention. It's like, how many people woke up in these past months? And I mean thousands and thousands, because I made a thread on Twitter about the Great Awakening, how to deal with it, and that got me like over 6,000 followers, all brand new, awakened in the past months. And that's when I thought, you see, this had to happen, no matter how we perceive it as being negative, deep state, this and that. But we're in a moment in life where apparently things are changing. We're going towards these golden age, as they call it. And so the energies of the earth are changing, and we are changing with that. Our DNA is changing with that. And therefore, it was a divine intervention,
Yes.
in the sense that, what do you call it? We have an expression for that, um, uh, like when you have an accident and then it turns out to be actually a lucky thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yes, yes, yes.
And this
Like
is,
a positive happenstance or some sort of like
yeah.
lucky happenstance. I don't know what it's called exactly, but some people call it serendipity.
Oh, is that what serendipity
Well,
means?
serendipity is like a chance encounter, I think, but it could be a chance encounter with anything, not just a person.
True.
It's very serendipitous.
But yeah, I see it that, and everybody's stressed around, right?
Hmm.
I look in the world so differently than other people because where I come from. So everything to me is like, oh my God, this is like amazing. And well, everybody, what do you mean amazing? It's horrible and this and that. And I'm like, oh, the things that I see now, it doesn't matter the struggle we go through with deep state and all that, because yes, but things are already sort of done, and
Hmm.
everything that's happening now is only to awaken people. And whether that's like a less comfortable feeling for most of them, actually
It's
almost
very
everybody,
uncomfortable.
yeah, for me not, for me this is kind of heaven, because I know myself, and
Yeah.
I have this big the bird view eye, where I literally see everything happen without even worrying about it. You see, and
Yeah.
that's because where I came from, my journey, and that makes it very, very special, and especially give me also some sort of an answer as to how I struggled when I came into this world, not feeling at home, not feeling not wanted, but not accepted, or like always from the outside looking in. And now I feel like, hang on, this is my world now, because I finally understand. Now I get to see, now everybody else is from the outside looking in, sort of feeling. It's amazing.
That's
I can,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned, like this idea of like our DNA changing and all of that. And I feel like it's interesting. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. But the more in tune I get with not just my own spiritual journey, but of course, like I've always been kind of tuned into my body and my health. And I've always been into alternative healthcare since I was like a late teenager. But I've specifically noticed that I feel like my body's reversing its aging
Yeah.
through the more I get involved in my own spirituality. Like you talked about spiritual development when we were pre-recording, and we'll get into that because I think that's something that people don't understand. Like our intuitive developments, like we never develop our intuitive abilities. But before we just jump into that really quickly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this idea of 5D age reversal.
I don't give labels or names to it. However, I just know that I look now 10 years younger. I look younger than 10 years ago, right? And with my development, also with doing detox, going completely holistic and all those things, I discovered that even, well, we are capable of healing ourselves because it's all here. It's the placebo effect, as you can call it, because if you believe that you're going to grow old, you will age. And I do absolutely believe in that. I always call myself like the Benjamin Button, female Benjamin Button. I don't know, for whoever hasn't seen a movie, it's about like somebody that is born old and then goes to younger. Now, and I figure we can heal our bodies, yeah, with our minds. In essence, if you're in tune with yourself, etc. The same counts for aging, and obviously, it doesn't mean that you're going to sit back and do nothing and be all unhealthy and all that. You need to work on it. Nothing comes like falling out of the sky. However, I believe that your mental state and your intentions are crucial to the outcome of everything that you do. Because I read many books, and if you think about, you can train your body with your mind, and it's been proven through study. If you think about exercise, yeah, intensively, and I actually tested it out. And so I was just not doing anything, lying in bed, but in my mind, I was exercising like intensively. Well, what do you know? Next day, I had muscle pains. So that proved to me, and scientifically, it was already proven that it works that way. That's when I started actually becoming even more interested, because then I thought, wait a minute, the telomeres, which is the part, for those that don't know, at the end of our DNA, that's also causing the aging, because it starts to, what you call it?
Fray.
Fray.
They fray
Okay,
and they shorten, and then they get to a certain point where once they get to a certain point, they just stop and the whole cell dies. And that's what causes an aging of where you have these dead cells. Like, yeah.
exactly. So it's not optimal anymore. So when I learned about that some years ago, at the same time I started going all holistic, and this is another thing, I bump always in stuff at the moment I need it, always. And so also this. And as soon as I learned about it, I thought, okay, so if I can do this with my muscles, I can do this with my telomeres. And therefore, I just put these intentions in. I always think about, I'm not growing older. I'm not, and even, obviously, like I said before, you need to keep working on yourself, stay healthy and all that, because also that is a belief system, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you say like, oh, I eat unhealthy, that's not good for me. And that's something that's really deep within us. Yeah. So I make sure that at least through my habits and the ways that I do things, eat and or exercise or detox, whatever, I always do it with the intention to get extra intention towards the mental aspect of changing your body, telomeres, cells, whatever. And it works. It works, definitely. Yeah. I'm
Yeah. I've done meditations with it too. In fact, you're inspiring me. It's like, because I've been wanting to create an actual telomere lengthening meditation for well, those in my alchemy group for sure, but maybe even just to upload something to my channel, because it's so powerful. The visual, I wish, like, I just released a starseed snap out of it video on Sunday,
Mm.
and I just wish people really started to grasp, and I think many are, but how powerful our intuitive abilities through our imagination, the mind, visualization, how powerful that tool is. And we've been taught to not use it or disbelieve in it and not give it enough credibility or credence to that. And
Mm.
I've literally healed some of the hardest health issues simply through meditation. And
Well, I can tell you, you don't even need meditation in essence. In the beginning, yes, you do, because you know you need to get in tune with that. However, if you train yourself every day to make it a belief system, like we have a belief system of everything, right? Like, I don't need to call examples because we all know it. And I made a belief system out of this. And therefore, I don't need to meditate because for me, it's just the truth. It's a knowing.
yeah,
And another
you
very
reprogrammed your subconscious. You took a conscious belief and you programmed it in. Eventually it embeds into the subconscious, and now it's in there.
exactly. And so you don't need the meditation. It's, well, in the beginning, maybe it helps, to start, to kickstart it.
Yeah, the
And that,
repetition is what matters, though, to finally make it.
well, that's it. And Craig Braden was one of the ones that inspired me incredibly. And Joe Dispenza, who made this book,
Yes.
who wrote, the placebo effect. It works with everything. It works with everything. There was it in that book where this man, they told him, you have cancer, you're going to die in 6 months. Now, obviously, the man dies after 6 months, and they do an autopsy. Turns out he never had cancer. Now, that tells you everything you need to know, because and this is one case study. There are so many of those.
Gosh, this is so important. And this is why when people book readings with me, like tarot readings or anything like that, I don't like to tell them this is what's going to happen.
No.
I like, this is what's showing up right now in this current timeline, but you can change that.
Yeah.
This is just information so that you see where your energy's at and how are you going to shift this, because there are infinite outcomes and infinite probabilities. And this idea of, like, when you go to someone, like, for instance, I'll just say maybe someone's coming to me because they really trust me and they trust me as an authority, like in what I'm looking into. That should never supersede your own authority and belief system of what you are capable of achieving, creating, and changing. And that's so important. And I try to drive that home as much as I can, because we are master creators.
We
And
are.
what you just spoke about defines that so well.
Yeah. And also, I have to a disclaimer here, because by no means am I completely healed. I still have
None of us
agoraphobia.
are.
No, but like some people, oh, but you still have agoraphobia. Yes, I do. It's not an easy thing to tackle. If you have it for 25 years, it becomes chronic. It becomes a belief system itself.
Mhm.
Actually, I don't even have to think about it. If I go outside, my body immediately reacts to it. So yes, I do need to train that. And yeah, I'm not very disciplined, because once you're so used to live in your house and the lifestyle that I have, I don't even bother going out because I'm happy in the way that I am. However, if I do want to get rid of it, I do have to train it.
Mhm.
The same with the antidepressants. I'm still on my last quarter, and so that was my 8th attempt. I never got this far with getting rid of antidepressants, and so now I'm in the last quarter, and now it's just a matter of deciding when I'm going to get down of this last quarter, and that I need to plan very, very meticulous, because it's a dangerous drugs. The worst part is this last part. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm working towards that, so it never ends, and everybody has their own, like I said, some people work on this part while another one on that part. And for others, it works the other way around.
Yeah.
And that makes it interesting, because this is also how you learn from other people, because they already did that part,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Well, this has been so fascinating. Before we end, I'd love to talk about your intuition and your intuitive abilities. How did you, like, okay, so you come from a bit of an intuitive family. You said your grandfather, talk about your grandfather a bit.
Well, my grandfather was born in Hong Kong, and also from Indonesian and Swiss parents. He then moved to Indonesia, where he got to work. At the time, we had the Dutch colonies, and my grandmother was Indonesian, and they met each other. And although my grandfather was white, the family didn't want them to be together because, you know, status and all that, because my grandfather was from diplomatic side. My grandmother was actually from royal side. And royal, I mean in the Indonesian way, which is a different type of way, probably like they have in Africa. However, so they eloped to be with together, and they stayed together for the rest of their lives, madly in love too, which is a great example I have. However, my grandfather, who was very much paranormal, and he could just move tables and stuff like that, and he had no control sometimes over it. It just happened, you
Wait,
know.
so he had telekinetic abilities, so he was moving things with his mind without even realizing it?
Well, he was very religious
Yeah.
and Catholic. However, if he would pray, for example, that cross would just go back and forth. But he could also, indeed, you know, just move a table. But my grandmother, who grown up in Indonesia, where it is considered evil, these things, you know, and so for her that was like, don't do that, don't do that. So my grandfather used to tease her constantly with these things, and this is why I've got all these different religions in my family and different cultures, which for me makes it so great, because you learn to see everybody's belief system, even coming out from religions and cultures. And so for me, it was funny when my grandfather then told the stories about how he would tease my grandmother by having, I don't know how he did that, but like having the table just move, you
That's
know?
so cute.
Yeah, it was. And my grandmother would then go hysterical because, you know, ooh, that's like, you cannot have that. That's like evil. And so for me, this is why I have a broad way of looking at things, you know, when it comes to religions or, you know, spirituality. For me, there is only one divine being. And people call it God, other people call it whatever, the universe. But for me, I know it's all the same. It's all one and the same. It's just interpreted differently.
Yeah.
And with some, there are different belief systems. However, so knowing that, growing up, I already felt inside, because my grandfather telling these stories scared me, because somehow intuitively I knew I had the same capabilities. And so I immediately closed that off, because I was very anxious and anxiety, as you know, my
What
whole life.
abilities came up for you instantly that you knew, like, oh, I want to shut this down? Like, what was it exactly?
Nothing. It was only the knowing.
Okay.
So
That's not nothing.
well, yeah, but I instantly closed it down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just told you about the healing I had, yeah, where I was like chained. So then I had a healing with Eric Rains.
Oh, Eric's wonderful.
I love Eric. I found him obviously through that community, and I was desperate because I fell back into this. Well, at a certain point, you do get used to a certain freedom that you already gained, but then you start to, you know, finding there is much more. There is something holding me down constantly. And so I had a session with him actually too, and he said, "Oh my God," he said, your whole body is completely enveloped with entities like parasites to keep you from your potential." And so what he did that moment, the taking away from these parasites that were it exactly the right chakras and all the points where, you know, you open up and
Mm-hmm.
you just woof. And so the moment it happened, I I won't forget that one anytime soon. He said to me, take a mirror, look at your eyes. I looked in the mirror, my eyes changed color. I looked at something that was so open. The power I felt at that moment when he took that away was not terrifying. It was beautiful. It was so powerful. And so he told me, he said, what I see now, I've never seen in my life. He said, your energy reach is so, so wide that somehow, I don't know how that works, entities and all that, closed you off immediately as a child, so you couldn't use it to begin with. And at that moment, I realized that was the truth, because he said, and I felt it, he said, you can literally set stuff on fire with your energy. And it was true, because I felt it. I mean, everything was just heating up, and it was, I mean, at a certain point, I had this experience with telekinesis. So I knew I had that, but then I started using it for healing, But obviously, since I was still also in the process of my own healing, I didn't want to practice it, because I do feel that if you're not well completely in your own energy yet, you shouldn't be doing that, So I want to have the full potential first before I start practicing that. And so and also I need extensive protection for myself in order to do all that, because I'm not a masochist, so I don't want to fall back in something that I just came out from. And so I'm very careful with these things. You need to know what you're doing. However, that feeling of that power energetically, and he said usually people reach about, I can only express it in meters, so they can reach around over with their aura, like a 5 meter span. You say you're arriving at 750 kilometers, beyond. And I knew this, so I started also using it for healing areas, where there's a lot of things going on, crisis and all that. However, I haven't done anything with that lately anymore, also because I've been focused on other stuff that, my channel, for example.
Yeah.
But I definitely know in the future something, that will come to the forefront again. And because it's there, I just know.
Wow. It's just, I'm getting chills through my whole body right now, because I really want this message to hit home with all the listeners and anyone who's watching, to know that you came here because you have skills that are needed on this planet that go far beyond what I think any of us can humanly right now in our present mind frame can conceive. And what you're just talking about, this idea with being able to start fire and just with your energy, to me, I totally see it. It's very obvious to me. And I feel like there's so many things that all of us are capable of doing, and it's all been dumbed down because,
absolutely,
well, we all know why, because I don't even need to say it, but everyone, please just start stepping up to the plate, start unleashing your ability, start getting to do your healing work, because the healing is so imperative to unleashing the intuitive abilities, because it's the pain, it's the fear, it's the trauma that holds everything back down. It's why they traumatize us. It's why we're traumatized, so that we can access our gifts. So you heal, you get access to your gifts, and then you start developing them, intuitive development over and over, and much like you, my intuition has really kind of skyrocketed in the last little while, particularly in the last few months. It seems like since COVID started, which is really weird.
Yeah. Energies.
Yeah. And I just, now that I'm starting to really recognize it and trust it, it's building faster. It's building faster. More is coming in and more is becoming available.
So you didn't trust it before?
I would trust a little bit, but I always doubted, like, who doesn't doubt themselves? You know,
I do.
everyone who's intuitive doubts themselves.
Actually, the only thing I did trust was my intuition, not my thoughts, not my surroundings, not nothing. The only thing I can trust. This is also interesting because I recognize, for example, you know, they call people that are black hats and they think they're white hats, and I'm like immediately, instantly, everything, and I'm never wrong. You know, I just know, and this is probably what I subconsciously overdeveloped as well, but now I start using it actually, although I didn't know it. However, this is another interesting thing, the whole starseed thing, yeah, that came up, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, starseed or not, I'm still unhappy. What can I do with it, etc. Right?
Yeah.
All I know is I'm not feeling safe on this planet. You know, that was my whole thought all along, and I'm just confused, and I don't get it. I don't understand it. I know I cannot just kill myself because that wouldn't do it, because I'm here for a reason. I knew that too, somehow in the back of my mind. Now, my last session I had brought everything home.
Uh-huh.
And that was with, oh man, I forgot her name. That's really bad. But she lives around the corner with me. But she works a lot in America as well, in these Mount Shasta events with Eric Rains as well. And she does a sort of channeling. Now, I never had anything with that, but since she was around the corner and I don't dare to go anywhere, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a session with her because somehow I felt I had to do it. So I go there, and she literally lives here, but she's always in America, and she happened to be there that week. And so I booked this session with her, yeah? And so what she does is she channels from beings from some planet. Even that I forgot. Anyway, I will get to that. But and so what happens is I lie on this thingy, and so what she says is at a certain point these beings taking over to heal you, and they will start healing those parts that really need attention at this point, yeah. So that happens, and at a certain point I'm kind of in a hypnosis, and I know there are beings, because she pretty much vanished in that state of mind where I was, and all of a sudden I get to see, and who knew that I was even interested or thinking of it or whatever, I get to see my star family. I always thought that a bit ridiculous when people said that, right? And it happens, and I started crying because for the first time in my life, I felt like being home. However, we had a telepathic connection, and all I needed was to look at them, and I got this, you know, all I had this thing, and instantly my whole life made sense. Everything, the reason why I was born, the reason why I was here, all of a sudden I knew I could trust what I saw right there, and that was this everything, every single day, second of my life had a purpose, and the whole lessons I needed to learn, but also where I'm headed, and that it's okay to be here. It's just because I was brought here, and because I had a mission. And yeah, you need to go through that whole human 3D stage in order to so that session was, I think it was now 2 years ago. That was the moment everything just fell into place, and for the first time I felt like, oh, so it's okay to be here. I mean, there's a point that I'm here, and ever since I started, I accepted that I'm here. And
Wow.
that's only 2 years ago, you know?
That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
I love that. And I actually started to get teary eyed when you talked about your star family and seeing them.
That was like something I have never felt in my life here since I live. And something like it was literally like coming home. And now I was listening to somebody on YouTube, and uh, well, there happened to be as well a reading they did. And oh my gosh, I had this, she said, um, you are here to now, be, will you say that, to accomplish your mission, and for you are actually to, now you can belong. Now you can belong. You belong. All you have to do is know that you belong. And I swear, I had the same thing yesterday, these tears, because I thought, oh my God, I didn't realize it, but for the first time in my life, 50 years, and I'm going to be 51 in 9 days. And for the first time in my life, I know that I can have that sense of belonging, and that, well, I guess that's what it's all, I all did it for, I guess,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Sorry, just getting a little emotional because there's a few people like on this planet that, well, there's two people in particular who feel like my home when I'm with them. And one of them I know is Palladian, and always I just feel so at home with them, and I know they're my family. And then one is like my best friend Lisa, who used to do the show with me. And it is definitely a feeling that I think is void for a lot of us. Yes. Throughout the majority of our life.
Yeah, that gives me goosebumps, because I now know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I know, and that, I don't know if you had the same experience, that when you, I don't even know where they come from. I think something Orion, whatever, and it doesn't even matter, because I'm here in the now, in this planet, right? So that is not important right now. But that feeling of indeed coming home, but the real meaning of family, mm-hmm. that I never had that. Mm-hmm. Although, yes, of course, I love my sister, I love her, that, but this goes beyond. And did you feel that same thing? Sorry for the people, it's getting dark here. I'm in a different time zone. So, but yeah, did you have, when you for the first time experienced that, did you have that same?
It's a comfort level of, it's a comfort level of just knowing that you're fully accepted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's a sense of safety. There's a bit of remembrance yes. of what it's really all about. And it's a connection that is very difficult to find here on this planet. And I'm not saying that none of us will, but I do believe that it's part of our mission to build that connection and to expand that connection. And especially when we look at, family values in today's time, and how destroyed they've been. The family value system has been completely destroyed. And it would be, when I think about when you talked about your grandfather and your grandmother and how they were madly in love with one another and all that, we don't see that in today's life very much at all anymore. It's very, very rare. And I have to believe that part of that is due to the disconnection of the family values and really being there for one another and working with one another in like a system that is just, I got your back, you got my back, and just this taking care. We're so self-absorbed and disconnected from things, and so distracted by like devices, sports, entertainment, like whatever it is, anything to distract you. Yeah. And I think one of the things that would be really powerful for this planet is for us to take those connections, if you do find them, if you're lucky enough to have some of those connections in your life where you feel that home, or even if you're feeling that connection with your star family, like you were talking about, if you feel like, if you can feel that connection, build it, start building. Like, how do you transfer that into a human connection?
Well, you say something interesting there, because my grandparents, indeed, they were like in love. They were like, my grandfather, even in their 80s, he would dance with her, and then she had a stroke, so he would brush her hair, even do her makeup and all these things, and he was heartbroken, obviously, when she died, but like till the very end, the way he talked to her, everything was for me. And the funny thing is, because you say that, I always knew deep inside that exists, that ultimate connection with somebody, even deeper than my grandparents probably had, because they come from a different generation, etc. But maybe they did know, but you couldn't talk about it. I don't know. However, I always knew, and the reason I never married or had children consciously, I did lose a child, but I believe that all was because, well, no, I don't believe it is like that. It's because I only aim for the highest. Without that, I don't, it's like, why would you go for less? Why would you settle for less? And
Yeah.
that I never ever understood this my whole life from looking at other people around. So for me, of course I had, dysfunctional relationships, etc. But I would never take it to that level. Besides the institution, marriage for me, is not the way it is supposed to be, I guess. And that's another belief system. However, um, I think there is this connection you can have with somebody on a soul level, on a level that is beyond. And that's what I had. And there are multiple of those, obviously, like I had with my ex. Only that purpose was fulfilled, but he's now my best friend, but the relationship purpose was fulfilled. And so that's fine. It's okay. The reason he's my best friend, because we both knew the purpose is done. It's fine. It's okay. Now we can be friends. We never had fights, actually. It was just a knowing. And so I know that he's kind of a soul family then, in that sense, right? But I do believe we do have that soul connection as well when it comes to relationship. And I think nobody should settle for less than that.
Yeah. And I think that's what's happened is, like, I think a lot of people have settled just because the system teaches us, or pressures us, I should say, to do things by a certain time, at a certain age, by a certain milestone. Like, there's all these,
Especially
like,
in America, especially.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me personally, like, I've experienced great love. And so I know what it feels like, and I won't settle for anything less than that. It's just, if
No.
it's not there, move on. Because once you kind of experience it and you know what that feels like, you
Why
can't,
would you downgrade, right?
you just can't. Like,
No, you can't. And this is another thing. And many people are afraid of being alone, but that's because they never worked on themselves to begin with. So they feel alone because they are empty, and so they think, I need somebody else to complete me. No, you are complete the way you are. If anything, a relationship should add to your completion. So you both become even more than that,
an extension.
an extension. And I learned that quite. It's funny because I never downgrade, in relationships, because it's a learning process there too, right? You only know what you don't want after you had it, and so for me that is so essential. And yet so many people, out of loneliness, and not seeing that the loneliness doesn't come from the fact that you don't have a relationship, but it comes from the fact that you are empty inside. If you do not fill it up, there is no man or woman in the world that will give you that feeling. Only you can do that.
Yeah. And I feel
Essential.
too, like, and we talked about this when Journey to Truth was on, that you can only know someone as well as you know yourself. And
Exactly.
that means that if you don't know what your true love is for yourself, you'll never be able to know that kind of love with someone else.
No, it's like saying, if you don't love yourself, how can you love somebody else? Right?
But you've got no place to come from to give it
Yeah.
or
You have
feel
no
it,
reference
like
point.
there's no reception place. So
Exactly.
absolutely.
Plus, you attract exactly that with the state that you're in. And that's another thing. When I look back and analyze my relationship, I'm like, it was deserved because, I attracted it. And so those are all lessons that we learn. But I think now is the time where people start slowly realizing this thing. And maybe we are just lucky that we were always in tune with these things in some way or another, and that we learned this much more quickly than most people do. And I guess, yeah, there's a reason for that too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been a really great conversation.
It
I
was.
personally think the audience should
Blue.
like it, if not love it. This has been so fascinating. I loved how you just really shared your story. Your story is fascinating. You've overcome so much. And, you know, although we can say, oh, we're not completely healed, the version of you is very much healed from the version like before. And it's always progress, not perfection, that we're striving for, right?
Yeah, it never ends, right? I believe firmly that people are supposed to live hundreds of years. I think we are only getting to infancy compared to what it is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So how do we get to develop ourselves
If
if
we're
we
only
don't even,
given so much time that's so limited. Yeah, exactly. And that's why we've got to really break free of that. And I feel like, you know, when you were talking about this belief system, whatever, and for me, I've always held the belief of I'm not really going to age hard because
I
me
do.
personally, I looked at my parents and my mom always looked so young, right? And I was like, I got the genes. I'm good. I'm not even worried about it. And so I kind of had this subconscious program that I'm like, I'm just not going to age. I totally know I'm not.
Same.
But part of it too, when I think about it, I'm like, I had half the story. My genetics, yes, play a part. And I know that Joe Dispenza talks about this and how genetics only play a very small portion of it.
Mm.
However, you can pull things into your DNA. You can download stuff into your DNA. You can literally work it like it's an artistic masterpiece
Yes.
of eternal youth
Yes.
to, and I'm not saying it's just because you want to be vain and you want to look young. Like, come on, let's face it. The more youthful you are, the more enjoyable life is for you, the more you can do, the more you can engage. And, you know, your
Well,
appearance, the physical stuff is just a bonus.
it also extends obviously to your mental capabilities
Yeah.
and all that, so that is essential as well. In aging, it's not only about the looks, it's about also staying fit, being alert. Well, I'm as alert as can be, however, you're right, it's the genes thing. I always use that, yeah, when people say, oh, you look so much younger than you. I use it because how are you going to explain that, right?
Mhm.
How are you going to explain, no, because my mindset is like that, and so it is. But many people don't comprehend the depth of that meaning. And so I don't even bother explaining that, because while you're in the process of healing, whatever, you can always touch upon that
Mhm.
individually with people, and until then, I just say, it's genes and it's healthy eating. It is obviously as well, but that's just a tiny part of it.
Yeah. It really is. There's so much we have to learn. There's so much we could work with. We're really just still in kindergarten in many ways.
True, true. I
Yeah.
believe that, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Please let the audience know where they can find you and contact you if they'd like to get in touch.
I'm on Twitter, very fanatically sharing the Q stuff, which is Dutch Warrior TKC, and it's like, well, maybe you can write it in your description. And on the channel, the Keystone Channel, where I now start to, share stuff about healing and yeah, expanding on that on the Wednesdays, and then on the Mondays I have more like uh, the Great Awakening, how to deal with that, how to how
Yeah,
to navigate it, let's say.
perfect.
So yeah,
And do you
that's
have a website yet?
no, I'm in the process, because I'm still on welfare. I'm not able financially to even start things like that. So through my donations of my channel, I um, you know have the plan to, and then obviously pull other people in that have different healing modalities, so everybody has access to get some form of healing that fits them, and so that's the idea.
Beautiful. Well, I'm so glad that we connected and then I got you on the channel. I loved this conversation. It was so nice, and I'll have to have you back on again soon.
Absolutely. I
Thank you
love it.
so
I
much.
loved it.
Yeah, and
Because you made me actually think of a lot of things that I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I haven't thought of that in a long time. So it's great always to have these talks,
it does. Yeah, I totally agree. It's like you could hear something 1,000 times, and it's like that 1,001th time you hear it, you're like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, and thank you to the audience for being here with me again. I love you guys so much, and we'll be back with you next week.
Thank you all for joining our show. We appreciate you tuning in and supporting us. If any of you have any questions you would like answered on the show, or any guests that you would like to hear on our show, please email that information to us at info@enlightenup.us, or send us a voice message using the Anchor app. There's a super cool feature on there that allows you to send us a message or ask us a question with a touch of a button right from the app. And please continue to support us by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you haven't checked out Nicole's channel on YouTube yet, head on over there for some more insight from her, or you can visit her website, inflexibleme.com, where you can book a personal coaching session or a tarot reading, watch some of her most informative videos, or you can sign up for her newsletter. And if you're interested in some light language healing, head to my YouTube channel, lisaloveslove.com, or send me an email to lisa@lisaloveslove.com to inquire about your own personal reading. Thank you again for joining us and supporting us, and we'll be back with you all next week.